Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Cancer Support Community Central Ohio's Lunchtime Learning. I am Darlene Honeyford. I'm the program manager here, and I'll be the one doing today's presentation on cancer-related post-traumatic stress. And so I am going to do my screen share. You are welcome to ask questions anytime throughout this session. Those of you at home, if you want to use the chat button, you are welcome to. I have my other computer up, and that way the chats will come through as we're doing this presentation. So we're just getting right into it. Is post-traumatic stress the same thing as post-traumatic stress disorder? So most people associate PTSD, it's an easier way of saying it, with the war veterans and victims of violent crimes. But many life experiences in which our safety and mortality can be threatened can really trigger PTSD. And really having the physical and mental shock of having a life-threatening disease can be a very traumatic experience for many of our cancer participants. You know, the experience of trying to get back to normal after cancer treatment ends really mirrors that of returning combat soldiers. And the immediate crisis is over, but our sense of security is threatened and shattered, really leaving us feeling unsettled and vulnerable. And then what about those who have metastatic cancer or a cancer that is uncurable? You know, those ongoing cancer conditions can really lead to that. I have a quote from a metastatic breast cancer patient who said that for men and women enduring the trauma of cancer treatment, the trauma is never over. Reminders exist everywhere, ready to pop out when least expected to wreak havoc. So that's a quote from a metastatic breast cancer survivor. And so that is just the background and kind of the basis of what PTSD is. But then what is post-traumatic stress, especially cancer-related post-traumatic stress? So the cancer-related post-traumatic stress is similar to PTSD, but research shows that it's not as severe and it doesn't last as long. Research also shows that the PTS rates among cancer survivors are slightly higher than the general population. You know, they say that 3 to 4% of patients who are recently diagnosed and up to 35% of patients evaluated after their cancer treatment can experience PTS. And that's according to a National Cancer Institute physician data query report. So there's a pretty legitimate report there showing about those statistics that you know, up to 35% of cancer survivors can experience PTS sometime in their cancer journey. And speaking of their cancer journey, PTS can really occur at any time in that journey. It can occur at the diagnosis. It can occur while treatment is going on, post-treatment. And then if there, you know, even is unfortunately a recurrence, that can definitely trigger experiencing PTS. And as you see on the slide here, it's really common for cancer patients to experience some symptoms of PTS without having the whole diagnosis of PTS. So what are some of those symptoms of PTS? And if you've ever done any kind of research or read any articles on PTSD, you'll see they're very similar. And so the very top one is that depression and anxiety, feeling kind of fearful or defensive. If you avoid people, it's just like, I just don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to deal with anybody. I just want to isolate. You know, that unclear thinking, which when you think about it, sometimes people who are in treatment get chemo brain. They get that brain fog. So you got to be careful about, is this coming from the treatment that I'm experiencing, or is this in addition and on top of that? You could have problems sleeping, either sleeping too much or not being able to sleep at all. You're just so unable to get any rest, which is just so vital for the body to be able to heal and repair itself. You might have a loss of interest in life, and you might have a little higher, okay, and you might have, oh, I put sleeping problems on here twice. Obviously, I think that that was an important thing. Sorry about that. Other additional symptoms would be memory problems, just not being able to have either long-term memory or usually more frequently, it's the short-term memory of just not being able to think of things. That trouble concentrating, again, that kind of going back into that brain fog, that feelings of irritability or even anger, just that, leave me alone. I'm just not in a happy place right now. There might even be feelings of guilt. And when we get into talking about caregiver PTS, some of that guilt will come in for the caregiver as well. And if you can't avoid those stressful memories, because of those can be kind of triggering, and we'll talk about triggering in a little bit later in the presentation. So when we talk about risk factors, as you see on the screen, not everybody is at an increased risk of developing cancer-related post-traumatic stress. But there are some factors that can increase that risk. So even though cancer is a traumatic stressor, it doesn't always mean a 100% chance that you're going to experience PTS. But as seen on the previous screens, post-traumatic stress, cancer-related post-traumatic stress often goes hand in hand with that anxiety and depression. That's where they were at the top of the list there. So looking at some of those risk factors, having to cope with many stressful situations at one time. Being stressed about money, because let's face it, cancer is a very expensive disease. Insurance is not always the easiest thing to ever have to navigate. Taking time off of work, juggling family, juggling responsibilities. So there's just a lot of stressful situations going on in a cancer journey life. And so, we're looking at also some of those other risk factors include if you already have a history of anxiety or depression, if you have that metastatic, if your cancer has unfortunately moved into the metastatic stage. If you don't have family and friends, if you don't have a really good support system, you might have family and friends and they're not supportive at all. So when you go back to avoiding people, that might actually be a good thing. As I already mentioned, those many stressful situations at the same time. Sometimes the communication can lack between a cancer survivor and their medical team. And so they really don't have a clear understanding of their diagnosis or what the treatment is or what the prognosis is. And so not having that really good understanding of a cancer diagnosis can lead to an increased risk of developing PTS. And then additional factors include, as we already talked about, having a recurrence. If you've gone through lots of lengthy surgeries, just the intenseness of the treatment that you're under. You're also at a high risk of developing PTS if you had childhood cancer. We'll talk a little bit here about stats for that. They say that one study has shown that survivors of childhood cancer, especially those who had longer or more intensive treatment, have an increased risk of developing PTS. And another study showed that nearly 20% of infants and preschoolers with cancer have PTS. So again, the children, the childhood cancer survivors have an increased risk. And then if you had previous trauma, that increases your risk of developing PTS. If you have a high level, just general stress, even outside of the cancer journey, if you might have either genetic or biological factors that affect memory and learning. And those, as we mentioned earlier, that if you use avoidance to cope with stress, because if you're avoiding, it's never addressing the stress and it just keeps building up and it's still there and it's just there. So that's not really a safe one. I found it interesting in the research that I did for this presentation that women from minority groups and single people are at a higher risk of developing PTS. I didn't delve really deep into the reasoning for that, but research shows that those are two additional risk factors that I just found very interesting. So what about those least at risk? Because people with cancer and survivors are less likely to have PTS if they have that strong support from family or friends. You know, if you have that support network underneath you. You're also less likely to develop PTS if you have that correct information from your medical team and you have that understanding of what is going on with your health and what your cancer diagnosis is and all of the details there. And also the last one there on the slide, if you have a really good relationship with your healthcare team, that puts you at a less chance of developing PTS. So caregivers, I mentioned a bit ago that caregivers can also develop PTS. For adult caregivers of children, that they are common to develop it, but also spouses and friends, just general caregivers at our higher risk, because of research shows that caregivers actually experience more distress with the cancer journey than their loved one, which again is, I think, yeah, that's pretty fascinating. That research was done through our headquarters Research and Training Institute. So seeing learning that a loved one has cancer, seeing them in pain and having medical emergencies can definitely be traumatic events. And the research shows that nearly 20%, almost 1 in 5 families of children with teenagers who are survivors of childhood cancer have a parent who experienced PTS. So if a child had a childhood cancer and they are now teenagers, 20% of their parents are at risk of developing PTS. So again, going back to that childhood cancer really has an effect on the families. So we talked about a little bit about the background of what is PTS versus PTSD, what are the risk factors. And so, you know, if you have, and we'll talk a little bit about how do I determine if I have PTS, but if you do experience some of this distress and some of the other things that come along with having PTS, there's some things that you can do. And the first one that we're going to talk about is support groups. You know, I am a social worker. And so I am an advocate for social workers or for support groups, because I think it's just vital to be able to be with other people. I'm a huge proponent about group support because of, you know, you can talk to your family and friends and they can be empathetic, but unless they are a caregiver of somebody with cancer themselves, sometimes they just don't get it. They just don't understand. So no one really understands like other people going through the same thing. And just that relatability, and it's just like they get it. Our support groups here at Cancer Support Community Center Ohio are professionally led, and we offer those in a safe and beneficial environment. If you attend a support group outside of Cancer Support Community, please make sure that they're professionally led. Sometimes there's peer mentors, but those peer mentors should have been trained. It shouldn't just be somebody who said, hey, I can get a bunch of people in my living room and we can talk just because of out of the goodness of their heart. So you want to make sure that they had some training just because of in a support group. Should be a safe and beneficial environment for you to be able to share everything that's going on. Cancer Support Community has no cost to our support groups. Some places might, but we never ever charge a fee. And you are not alone. Whether you are a survivor or if you're a caregiver, you are never alone. And that's the community that we offer here, or a community if you go someplace else. There's other support groups for people in a cancer journey or their caregivers, you know, throughout the city. And if you're long distance on watching this, even throughout the state. So please know that support groups is one of the best things for a coping mechanism for PTS. Some other strategies and tips for coping is going to be about some stress reduction. and relaxation. I can talk. Relaxation trainings and recognizing triggers. So it is important to kind of know what works for you. I always talk about when I either do counseling or when I would do support groups, I talk about a toolbox. When you have a toolbox at home and you have different tools in there to address different issues, you have a hammer, because if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But you should have in your toolbox a hammer and a pair of screwdrivers, and that screwdrivers could be a Phillips or a flathead. You might have multiple. You might have a wrench set. You might have a locking wrench, a channel wrench, all these different tools to address these different things. So when I think about self-care techniques, I use the analogy of a toolbox because there's more than just deep breathing. That can be a stress management. There's more than just meditation. And so as you're building up your repertoire, your toolbox of self-care techniques and your coping techniques, if you haven't ever done any of those, learn something new and try something new. So, make relaxation part of your regular routine. Learn to meditate or to practice yoga, taking a walk in nature or doing whatever it is that you do to help you unwind and relax. Because relaxation is really not a luxury. It's really very necessary part of a cancer journey, either for a survivor or for a caregiver. So again, I'm doing a commercial for Cancer Support Community Center Ohio. I can't not, because we offer these programs. We have mindfulness hour twice a month. We have gentle yoga 3 times a week. We have yoga nidra twice a month. And Lily, our community herbalist who does our natural living workshop, is always talking about being out in nature. There's actually a Japanese term, and I can't pronounce it, but what it means is nature bathing. And what that means is you just get out in nature and you just sit. No distractions, no phones, no talking to other people, and just bathe in that experience of being in nature, breathing in the smells, seeing the sights, and just experiencing that. So that's a really important thing, nature. And if you're out in nature and there's actually research that shows that if you actually get your hands in dirt, it's even healthier and more healing. So if you like to garden, you like to play with flowers, get your hands in that dirt. Yes, it'll take some scrubbing to get the dirt out from under the fingernails, but the rewards are definitely worth that. Some other ways of being able to do stress reduction or relaxation training, as I mentioned earlier, is deep breathing, that deep abdominal breathing. You might also want to try progressive muscle relaxation. Some auxiliary services that you can do is acupuncture. Research has shown that acupuncture is really great for stress. Aromatherapy. Again, doing it in a safe way and making sure that you know which essential oils are safe to breathe in. If you do guided imagery is a very powerful relaxation and stress management. Journaling, that is a wonderful way of getting things out onto paper, and you can journal with words or you can journal with images or pictures. You can do creative journaling. Massage. Music therapy, Reiki, and then we've already mentioned yoga, but then also Tai Chi. So those are a list of different things. A little later in the session, if we have time, we're going to do some of these practices. So as you're, again, thinking about those stress reduction and relaxation techniques that you use, your tools, also recognize triggers of PTS. And so what are triggers? Triggers can be anything that would just certain sights or sounds or smells or feelings can bring that flashback. My dad for years was a smoker. he smoked, and I get a whiff of cigarette smoke now because no one in my family smokes. But I get a whiff of cigarette smoking now if I'm out shopping or something, and it'll take me back to my dad and his smoking and then his cancer journey with his small cell lung cancer. So that can be a trigger. So anniversaries of your surgery, anniversaries of your diagnosis, or other cancer-related milestones can reawaken those memories and feelings. So if you know that a anniversary is coming up because of, hello, it's an anniversary, you know what those are, you can kind of hopefully plan around that and not get caught unawares. So going back to our strategies and tips for coping, you know, one of the things that's really important is acknowledging and accepting your feelings. We're all human, and we come with a huge amount of emotions and feelings in our emotional bank. And sometimes they come out in positive ways, and sometimes they come out in not so positive ways. But you know, they're your feelings, and that's your reality and your perception. Avoid obsessive thinking and just falling over and thinking of it and just being mirrored in that. Your brain just gets tired. I don't know about you, but my brain gets tired. So, you know, trying to take a break from that. You know, regular exercise, healthy diet, and plenty of sleep. I think that's on any prescription for really anything. That's just general health and really good plans. So if you're going through this list and you're thinking, what about all these feelings that I'm feeling? You know, do I need some additional professional help? So you'll see the list on the left. You know, ask yourself these questions. And, you know, think about, you know, am I irritable? Well, I'm irritable when it comes time to, you know, fill up my gas tank or pay my bills. So you have to, you know, be kind of judicious with, you know, figuring that out. And are you easily distracted and not being able to think clearly? And again, going back to one of those really big ones of sleep, are you having trouble sleeping? Either you're sleeping 20 hours out of the day or you're only sleeping 3 hours out of the day. Those are really big key things. Do I have repeated scary thoughts? Is that just, are they on a repeat and just constantly, you know, going over and over and over? Have I lost interest in activities that I once enjoyed? I'm, you know, kind of isolating, and, you know, if I really enjoyed getting in the garden and I haven't done it in 6 months. Well, one of it, if when the humidity is 100% and it's 92 degrees outside, that's kind of hard, but you know where I'm coming from with that. Am I feeling detached from reality? Is there that barrier and I'm just kind of in this fog? And am I, are my coping skills that I have not enough if what I'm doing just isn't working? So if you're going through and you're answering these questions in the positive, then the questions on the right-hand side, then have a conversation, an open, candid, safe conversation with your healthcare team. You know, depending on who you feel most close with, that you feel most comfortable with, that's a nurse navigator, an oncology social worker. It could be a nurse practitioner. It could be your oncologist, you know, whoever in that practice that you feel that you can talk to. Just flat out ask them, you know, this is what I'm experiencing. Do you think I could have it? And, or what else could be causing this? You know, it could be the medication, it could be the chemo, it could be, you know, and so the medical team would be able to work with you on that. Just ask them, what do you recommend to help relieve my symptoms? You know, they might say some of the things that's on this presentation today, or they might have other ideas. How long can I expect to have the symptoms, and can they be treated? I'm like, is this something I'm going to be feeling forever, or will they go away? A good question to ask. And sometimes medication can benefit. It's like that's all I need is take one more medication, one more pill, just one more. But sometimes the benefits outweigh just add one more to the list. And can I talk to a counselor about my symptoms? I mentioned that Cancer Support Community Central Ohio has multiple support groups. We have support groups for cancer diagnosis, and then we also have support groups for caregivers. And In addition to that, we have counselors that we contract with, and we will pay for the first 6 sessions of therapy. And then after those, then you work with that therapist to switch over to either insurance billing or paying out of pocket. But having a counselor, again, I'm a social worker, so I'm a firm believer in having somebody in a professional way of being able to speak about those issues. And then again, the support group, ask if they can help find one. But you guys know about us. And if there's some cancer diagnosis that you have that we don't have a support group for, we would definitely work really hard on trying to find you a local group. So just because a Cancer Support Community Central Ohio doesn't have that specific cancer diagnosis support group, doesn't mean one doesn't exist. We'll just connect you up with somebody else. So when do you seek professional help? You have these questions, you have this conversation with your medical team. So it's like, when do you, reach out next? And as we've already mentioned, it's very normal to feel anxious and unsettled after a traumatic event, such as a cancer diagnosis. And so if you feel that these painful thoughts and intrusive memories are lasting longer than a month, and then if they begin to cause problems in your relationships, employment, and others, your regular daily life, if these thoughts and feelings are intrusions to how you're feeling and being able to have a normal day-to-day interaction, that's when you want to reach out for professional help. And so what would that professional help look like? Again, as I mentioned, our therapist, most of our therapists can do cognitive behavior therapy. Even with our music therapists and our art therapists, they'll use some cognitive behavior therapy. They just use those modes in other ways other than just a conversation between you and the therapist. There's therapists out, none of ours, but there's therapists in the city that will do EMDR, which is that eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I have never been trained in this, but I have a friend who has, and she finds it very effective in her treatment and in her private practice. So if that is of an interest, you can talk to your doctor about that and getting a referral. We've already talked about medication, that maybe that being on medication for short-term memory or short-term basis might be beneficial. And then that crisis intervention. So when you're looking at therapy, when you're working with a therapist, you're working with that therapist to help understand symptoms, learning ways to cope and manage stress. The therapist can help you become aware of your thinking patterns that can cause distress and negative emotions and replace them with more balanced and useful ways of thinking. And then it can help you become less sensitive to unsettling triggers. So before we get to the conclusion, I want to do some stress management techniques with everybody. So the first one that we're going to do is a guided imagery. So for those of you at home and for those in the room, find a comfortable way to sit. Usually they encourage you to sit straight up with your feet flat on the floor. Have your hands comfortably, on your lap or on the table in front of you. And we're just going to do a little bit of deep breathing to get kind of set into the mood. So as you're breathing in through your nose and you're breathing out through your mouth, you're going to feel your abdomen rise. And I will do this on a count of 4. And if it helps, when I do this count of 4, to think of a box. We'll breathe in for a count of 4. We'll hold our breath for a count of 4. We'll breathe out for a count of 4. And we'll hold for a count of 4. And we'll go through that just to kind of get in the right mindset. So again, as you're breathing in, hopefully you're feeling your abdomen rise and not just your chest. So closing your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Please continue to do your deep breathing, but we are going to go on a guided imagery now. We are going to start in a parking lot, and we can feel the warm tar under our feet as we step up onto the white concrete of a sidewalk. We walk down the sidewalk, which is very smooth and no cracks, and we come to the entrance of a path in the woods. We step onto that path and we immediately feel the coolness of the shade. We can feel the light breeze blowing through the trees, and we can smell the fresh ground and the flowers that are planted along this path. As we continue down that path, we can feel the smooth, round stones under our feet. Everything is flat and it is safe to walk, and we will not trip. We continue to walk down this path, seeing the green tree leaves, seeing the rich wood bark of the tree, smelling the fresh, light, refreshing smells of the flowers. We can hear the wind whispering through the tree leaves, and we can feel the wind gently caressing our face, just gently moving our hair. We'll continue down this path for a little bit, just breathing in this nature, seeing the beautiful colors of the flowers, the yellows and the purples. And we're just going to breathe for a little bit as we walk slowly down this path. We come to the end of the path and we're at a beach. So we step out of the shades of the path into the bright, warm sunshine of a beach. We are stepping onto white, glistening sand that is just warm under our feet. Not hot, just warm and feeling very comfortable. As we walk down this white sand, just lightly depressing into the sand, we can feel the warmth and the grit, and we can catch the sun glistening on the whiteness of the sand, just very gently reflecting that white flashes. As we walk down to the water, we can observe the beautiful blue and turquoise color of the water. We see the water coming up in waves onto the sand, gently wetting the sand along the shore. There's little white caps on that blue wave of water, just gently rolling in and gently retreating. We walk down until we're stepping onto the water-cooled wet sand. And the next wave that comes in just gently caresses our toes. The water is warm, not too cool, not too hot, just warm. And we can smell the salt from the water. And we can hear in the distance the call of the seagulls and the birds singing. But they're in a distance. They're not by the shore. They're not close to us. We walk along that wet, darker sand, and the water just gently comes up over our feet and retreats. And as we're walking along, we can feel the sun warming our face, warming our shoulders. We can smell the salt-laden wind gently caressing our hair, caressing our face. And as we walk down the beach, we come to a lounger chair. It is in the shade, and has a nice, thick cushion. Very bright yellows and red stripes. We sit down on this lounger chair for a minute and just breathe in the warm air, looking at the beautiful white and brown sand, watching the beautiful turquoise water with the white capped waves. We see the palm trees in a little distance, the brown bark and the green leaves just gently moving in the breeze. And we just sit and we breathe and we just absorb and we bathe in this nature. It is time to stand up and we retreat back down the beach towards the path. We will leave the water. We will leave the brown wet sand. We will walk up the white glistening sand back to the path. Feeling the sand slightly depress under our feet. Feeling the warmth of the sand and the slight grittiness. We step out of the sun into the shade of our path. Again, we feel the round stones under our feet. We can feel the shade gently cooling us after spending time in the sun. The light fragrance of the flowers is once again in the air. And we can hear the wind whispering through the tree leaves. And you can feel it gently tickling your face and moving your hair. As we walk down the path, we can just breathe in the rich soil smell, the flowers, and just listening to the wind. We step out from the path back into sunshine, but we're on the white concrete sidewalk. And when you are ready, you may open your eyes. So that is a guided imagery. I like to go to the beach because of the sight and the smell and the feelings. Most people have been around a beach and so they can immediately relate to that. I've had other people who've done guided imageries. When I've done it, it's like, go to some place that you want to go to. And then we just went through, what do you see? What do you taste? What do you smell? And I had somebody who went back to the River Jordan because that's where she was baptized. I had somebody go to the kitchen of their home that was torn down like 30 years previously. And a road now runs through their house. And so, if the mountains or a cabin and a fireplace or walking through the snow or being at a beach, whatever you feel most comfortable, then that's where you want to go. And again, engage all of your senses, your sight, your smell, your touch. The only thing I didn't do on this trip was taste. And if you wanted to do taste, because we're at the beach, I go to Hawaii. And so you got to have fresh pineapples or mangoes. And then you can, do the refreshing taste. So that's a guided imagery. The next thing I want to do is progressive muscle relaxation. Has anybody ever done progressive muscle relaxation? Jane has? Okay. So with this, we're only going to do just a couple muscles from our hands and our arms. So with a progressive muscle relaxation, I usually do this myself when I'm lying in bed and the brain is just going, and I'm not going to sleep. I'm just not in that mindset. So I will start from my toes and work my way up to the top of my head. And what you're doing is you are deliberately contracting your muscles and then releasing them. And so this is really a great way of just one, it gets blood flow. And it kind of, if you have any really tight muscles, you're physically forcing them to release. And so we're just going to do our hands and our forearms and then up in the shoulders. So what I'd like for you to do is start with our hands and we're going to clench as tight as you can, if you can, because sometimes people with arthritis and right now my finger's hurting. So I'm clenching a lot tighter with my right than I am my left, because of the idea behind this is to have fun and not cause pain, as one of our Tai Chi instructors said. So we just clench for a count, maybe a count of 10. And I've talked a lot now, so we're going to do 3, 2, 1, and release. And if you felt that tension in your hands and just that sensation of release, it's just like, oh, that feels so nicer. So what we're going to do is we're just going to try to tighten our forearms, if you can. Just really kind of try to tighten that forearm. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. And now we're going to do the shoulders. We're going to bring our shoulders up to our ears. Bringing those up and just making them as tight as possible. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. So hopefully you felt that tension and then you felt that release. Again, it's just making the muscles release, and just it helps with blood flow. And again, when my brain is just going 1,000 miles a minute and I'm like, I need to go to sleep because I got to get up and work in the morning, I just start with my toes, curl my toes for a count, move my way all the way up. And I'm usually like limp as a wet noodle by the end, and I just fall asleep. So that works for me, just a recommendation. The last one that I want to do is another deep breathing technique. We did the box breathing, but I want to focus on triangle breathing. So triangle breathing is you breathe in, you breathe out, and you hold. And so we'll just do that. These are very quick techniques that you can do at any time. So again, finding a comfortable place to sit, keeping your hands where you're most comfortable. You're welcome to close your eyes if you want. Keep your eyes open, whatever again was most comfortable for you. And so we'll breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth for that count of 3. So in, 2, 3, out. Actually, I did it wrong. I apologize. In, hold, out. So in, 2, 3, hold. 2, 3, out. 2, 3. Feeling your abdomen rise in, 2, 3, hold. 2, 3, out. 2, 3. In, 2, 3, hold. 2, 3, out. 2, 3. In, 2, 3, hold. 2, 3, out. 2, 3. In, 2, 3, hold. 2, 3, out. 2, 3. In, 2, 3, hold. 2, 3, out. 2, 3. In, 2, 3, hold. 2, 3, out. 2, 3. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. So those are just some of the tools that you can put in your toolbox for some self-care, for some stress relaxation, and coping mechanisms. So when we come to conclusion, a trauma like cancer shatters our sense of security, making us feel powerless and vulnerable. Taking a positive action towards recovery directly challenges this sense of helplessness and helps us regain a sense of control. It can take time to get over trauma and to feel safe again. But by seeking treatment, reaching out for support, and developing new coping skills, you can heal and move on with your life. So what questions does anybody have for me at this time? Anybody at home is welcome to either use the chat or unmute. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned obsessive thinking. How do you prevent it or fix it? Because I can tend to obsess about obsessive thinking.
That's an excellent question about obsessive thinking and how to address that and to not obsess about thinking about being obsessed. And so a couple of those those things that you do to get your mind off. If it's like I'm going to envision when I feel that when I'm thinking about this over and over and over again, picture a square in your mind or a triangle and do the breathing. Another thing is, if you like to journal, writing it down, getting it out. Journaling is like purging and getting it out. I've written many letters to the editor. Kids nowadays are like, what's that? Because everything's digital. But I would write many letters to the editor that I never mailed. Because all I was doing, I was so mad about something, it kind of fired me up. So I put it down on paper, and I'm like, a day later, I went back and read it. I'm like, oh yeah, I can't send that. I've done the same thing with letters to friends when I was so angry that it's like I had to get it out. And then after I was like, oh, then I could go back and talk to them.
Maybe even a letter to something or someone even.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, yeah, if you believe in a higher power, write a letter to them. You can write a letter to your cancer and you can say, you suck, or whatever you want to say. I just realized that I am being recorded, so. But yeah, you can, any way to get that out. So when you have that mindset comability, you can, anything that could help get your mind off of that. If it's if it's something like just taking a walk, you have to be very intent and replacing those thoughts with something else. So if you take a walk, you have to say, okay, how many I need to find 5 yellow flowers. I need to find 7 purple flowers. I need to find 3 different park benches. So your mind is thinking of something else and you're focused on something else when you feel those feelings. Because if you just take a walk, the brain's going and it's going a mile a minute. And then you're like, I got to stop thinking about this. So I'm obsessing, thinking about this. And so just replacing that, with healthy things, sitting and binging on you're watching your TV or grab a tablet and watching YouTube videos for a little bit might help. I love watching cat and horse videos, cat and dog horse video, the animal videos. But that is, I love it. But if that becomes a crutch and not a help, because they can be time suckers. I can look up from my tablet, I'm like, oh, 45 minutes has gone by and all I've been doing is laughing at cats. So you got to be careful with that. But yeah, just, trying to replace those thoughts with other things and knowing it'll take a little while to kind of reprogram. I hope that helped.
Oh, it did. Thank you.
Well, if anybody, oh, yes, ma'am. Yeah, absolutely.
What do you do with your fear?
Your fear. That is another excellent question about how do you deal with fear. And that's where I would highly recommend talking to somebody, either in a support group or in a counseling session. If you're not comfortable with talking to other people, there is some techniques that you can do. The EMDR is really a very powerful technique with addressing that. But there's that one, from what I found, Billy, helps when you're working with other people to help address that. You know, being able to acknowledge it and being able to talk through it and work through that, and then finding some other coping skills that help. That one you might be able to do on your own, like the coping skills such as the obsessive thinking, but I think that that one is a little bit more helpful when you're able to process that with somebody from the outside who's not experiencing that per se. You know, they might experience fear, but not your fear, and then they can help you come up with coping techniques. I don't know if that was a helpful answer, but that one I think is going to be more than a solo endeavor. Well, if you have any questions or anything comes up in the future, this is how you can find me. I am here 5 days out of the week. And you have my email address there, first initial, last name, and then the agency phone number. But I do thank everybody for coming out today and for participating in our lunchtime learning. We will be back in August. Dr. Allison Quick is going to be talking about cancer-related fatigue. So that'll be the first Wednesday in August. So thanks again, everybody, for coming to join us. And I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday weekend.